I woke up and wished that I was dead, with an aching in my head. I lay motionless in bed. I thought of you and where you gone. Let the world spin my bed.
Good morning and welcome. Hey, thanks for listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. As always, I thank you for tuning in. Happy Friday. We are back. Today we're going to do a 1-hour podcast, approximately a 1-hour podcast. I was fortunate enough to sit down with my friend Tracy McCartney, who covers the New England Patriots for NFL Female, yesterday evening, and we talked about the big game on Sunday. So we'll play that here in a minute. We haven't really focused much on sports lately. In fact, as you know, if you follow this podcast, we took a bit of a hiatus as the election cycle wound down and came back a little bit. And so now we're back on a regular schedule. We're doing shorter podcasts this year. There's so much going on. We won't be able to fit everything that we want to talk about into the podcast this morning, but we're going to start with one thing that is extremely important, and that is protest. Protest is good. Protest is American. Do not let the people who are trying to wipe away the Constitution tell you otherwise. Protest is as American as it comes. Let me read for you just a few quotations about, listen, this country was founded on protest. There is nothing more fundamental to democracy than the right of citizens to protest. Nothing. So let me read for you just a few quotations about protest. The first one from William Faulkner: never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. Henry David Thoreau said, disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. Obedient must be slaves. Bob Marley: get up, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Do not let the people who are trying to decimate the Constitution tell you that protest is bad. Protest is good. Keep protesting. I'm very concerned about what's going on in this country when it comes to democracy and the Constitution. We've talked about that before. We'll keep talking about that. We're going to be talking about Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch, who must be voted down. Must absolutely be voted down. This is a bad candidate for the Supreme Court. Couldn't be any worse, in my opinion. We'll talk in a lot more detail about that in some of the podcasts to come and focus on the reasons why for that. But the only reason that you need to know that is because the ACLU issued a statement where they they don't pick sides. The ACLU fights for civil liberties. They don't pick sides, but more than anyone else, I really trust their judgment. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the opinions that he has issued and some of the things that he has done. Listen, it's we live in concerning, strange times where it's beholden upon us as citizens to really look at what's going on, because we have a White House that is full of white supremacists. I do not know where the white supremacy, I know where it came from, but how did we let this happen? I do not believe the majority people in this country approve of or support white supremacy. They don't support Nazis. They don't support fascists, but we've let it fringe take over, and we've got to stop this. We talked a little bit about the Berkeley situation and what went down there and how we talk about that in our last podcast. Listen, it's amazing if you study history and know anything about it. It is amazing and scary how closely this country resembles Germany when the Nazis took control. And if you never thought that could happen in this country, well, wake up! It's happening now. We're watching it now. Um, we don't need a fascist on the Supreme Court. We don't. That would be bad. It would be very, very, very bad. And never forget that the Republicans stole that seat, just like it looks like they stole the White House. And so it's important that we be very vigilant about what's going on. And it's amazing because the White House regularly lies to you. I mean, you have a White House that regularly lies to you, and it's time consuming. I know that it's exhausting for people, but it's important that we correct those lies, that we don't let those lies continue to circulate and muddy the waters. We have to correct these things, and it's important. It's right now. It's important now more than ever that we act like we truly are a representative democracy. That we discharge our duty as citizens to monitor what's going on and to make sure that we don't become Nazi Germany, because that would be bad. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's happening, and so it's important that we pay attention to those things. So we're going to be talking about Neil Gorsuch in a lot greater detail in the podcast to come. Since we are talking about sports on today's podcast, it would be it's beholden upon me to talk a little bit about Baylor and what down with Baylor, and then we're going to talk about Greg Popovich and what he had to say about Black History Month. We're going to actually play the clip from what he said, because it is so. I got a big lump in my throat, tears in my eyes just listening to him. I read the quote yesterday, but this morning I pulled the audio from that quote so you guys could listen to it and hear it. And as salty as he is, and I know he probably didn't necessarily like the question. You'll be able to tell that when you listen to that clip. But he answered it, and he answered it in such a thoughtful manner. And I wish that we could all be that thoughtful. So we'll play that here in a minute. And then, of course, we're going to be playing my sit down with Tracy McCartney. That's an interesting little segment. Tracy and I are great friends, and we agree about a whole lot of things. But we don't agree, obviously, on Deflategate. And, it always makes me uncomfortable to defend Roger Goodell, because he does bungle things so regularly, and the NFL is so inconsistent about a lot of things that they do. But I stand by my position on Deflategate, and so you'll hear that. And it got tense, but Tracy knows that I love her, and even though we disagree, we're still friends. We're always going to be friends. And disagreement is good. Well, I don't know where we got this notion that that we all have to think alike and agree to have conversations. You should have conversations with people you disagree with. As we've talked about before on this podcast, most recently in the last one, I think that it's important to have these difficult conversations, because if we don't have them, we can never come to a better understanding of anything. So we need to have those conversations. But we'll play that in a minute. So Baylor, if I already knew Art Briles was a bad person from just following that, but information is starting to trickle out about what happened at Baylor, and will we ever hear everything, know the true story? Probably not, but we know enough to know that what happened at Baylor should never ever happen in our colleges and our universities. And if anything good can come from that situation, it's that we make sure that the people who are responsible for what happened at Baylor, and it's primarily Art Briles and his cronies, his minions, the people that he surrounded himself with, who, by the way, still have jobs in our university system. They should not have jobs in our university system. That's the next step, is to make sure these men do not have control over access to, access to our college campuses, because they're bad men. There's no other way to say it. They are bad men, and they do not need to have jobs. But what we found out is it's not surprising. You really already pretty much knew this, but now we know. We've seen the text messages, and now we know that Art Briles and his minions protected young men that they knew were assaulting young women on college campuses, and that possibly 4 young women were raped because they protected one such young man. And if that does not infuriate you, what happened to your heart? What happened to your soul? When did you lose those things? Because it is important. You should be outraged. You should be infuriated. What's going to happen with Baylor? I mean, I don't. And then let's not forget that. Oh, I don't even want to get into Falwell right now. We'll talk about that on another podcast, because I'll get off track and get on a rant, and we won't be able to get to anything else. But what's going to happen at Baylor? It's going to be very interesting. We should pay attention to that. We should pay attention to these things because they matter. And if you haven't listened to the victims in any of the cases, Baylor, Florida State, and I could go on and on and on and on and on. If you haven't listened to any of the victims in those situations, why not? Please listen to the victims. Please hear their words. They're important. And how the victims get treated versus how Art Briles got treated is very telling. It tells us a whole lot about what's going on in this country, in particular what's going on in the sports world, and what our values are and what our priorities are. And it's a teachable moment. We need to learn from this and learn to do better and learn to be better. And hopefully we will. So it's Black History Month. Our president and vice president celebrated that by taking the word black out of it and renaming it African American History Month, which should outrage you. And then, not surprisingly, celebrated it by celebrating a white male and showing their complete and utter ignorance about one of the most prominent Black activists in our history, Frederick Douglass. These people, I mean, it's amazing how clueless the Trump administration is, and dangerous, because they are white supremacists. It's still mind-boggling that is where we are as a country. But Greg Popovich had something so profound to say about it that it's important to listen to it and hear it. So I'm going to play that for you now.
It happens every year, but when it comes around, Coach, what does Black History Month mean to you?
You're always the political guy around here.
No, I'm not. I get it from you.
Well, it's a remembrance and a bit of a celebration in some ways. And it sounds odd because we're not there yet, but it's always important to remember what has passed and what is being experienced now by the Black population. It's a celebration of some of the good things that have happened, and a reminder that there's a lot more work to do. But more than anything, I think if people take the time to think about it, I think it is our national sin. And it always intrigues me when people come out with, I'm tired of talking about that, or do we have to talk about race again? And the answer is, you damn right we do, because it's always there, and it's systemic in the sense that when you talk about opportunity, it's not about, well, if you lace up your shoes and you work hard, you can have the American dream. That's a bunch of hogwash. If you were born white, you automatically have a monstrous advantage educationally, economically, culturally in this society. And all the systemic roadblocks that exist, whether it's in a judicial sense or a neighborhood sense with laws, zoning, education. We have huge problems in that regard that are very complicated, but take leadership, time, and real concern to try to solve. And it's a tough one because people don't really want to face it. And it's in our national discourse. I mean, we have a president of the United States who spent 4 or 5 years disparaging and trying to illegitimize our president. And we know that was a big fake, but still felt that for some reason it had to be done. I can still remember, paraphrase close to a quote, investigators were sent to Hawaii and you cannot believe what they found. Well, that was a lie. So if it's being discussed and perpetrated at that level, you've got a national problem. I think that's enough.
All right, we'll take another quick break. When we come back, my interview with Tracy McCartney, so stay tuned in. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. As promised, I'm joined now by Tracy McCarthy. Tracy covers the New England Patriots for NFL Female, and it's been a while since she and I have chatted on a podcast. We've chatted in other ways, other manner, but so happy to have her, and it's been a hot minute since we've talked about sports on the podcast. So, Tracy, welcome. I'm so happy you were able to join me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Well, I am too, and as I just mentioned, sports is kind of taking a little bit of a backseat to some of the madness that we see going on in the world right now. But the big game is coming up. It's this weekend, and I know that you're very excited. Although, my goodness, I mean, you guys just need to quit hogging all the Super Bowls.
I'm sorry. No, actually, I'm not sorry.
Well, you shouldn't be, right?
It's interesting though because somebody said to me today, I always go for the underdog in the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to root for your Patriots. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's fine because I'm kind of the same way. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that it's my team, I would be the same way. So I don't begrudge anybody not rooting for the Patriots. I'd be sick of us too if I was them.
Yeah, before we really get started, and because it's been so long, tell everybody a little bit about who you are. And I believe we've mentioned it, but you cover the Patriots for NFL Female. So tell them a little bit about that.
Okay, well, my name is Tracy McCartney, and
I'm sorry. I think I said McCarthy. I apologize.
It's okay. People do it all the time. And I was born and raised in New England to parents both from Boston, and so I've been a Red Sox Patriots fan my whole life. And a couple of years ago, Liz, who is one of the founders of NFL Female, approached me and asked me if I was interested in covering the Patriots, because I was apparently tweeting a lot about football.
No way.
And so she actually asked me to start by covering the AFC East.
Okay.
And then when the woman who covered the Patriots couldn't do it anymore, she asked me to do the Patriots. So I've been doing it for just wrapping up my second season, and it's been really fun. It's really great. I've met a lot of amazing women, and you included, of course. Got to go to Canton to the Hall of Fame for
that's such a great trip.
It was really great. We had a great time, and so yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's always awesome to meet other women who, enjoy sports as much as you, and certainly that's been one of the the most beneficial things, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for, to NFL Female and to that. And I'm so happy to have met you, and I don't hold your Patriots fandom against you. People think that I'm a Patriots hater, which I'm not, but it is kind of interesting. So you got your Patriots fandom from your parents.
Yeah, I grew up in New England, and yes, both of my parents are from Boston, and I come from a family of 3 girls. I'm the oldest daughter, and my dad was a big sports person, and so my grandfather had season tickets to the Patriots in the 70s and early 80s. So, I've been a fan since I was real little. I used to go to hockey games and football games and baseball games with my daddy. So,
so awesome.
It's just actually it's this time of year where I really miss my dad the most. My dad passed away in 2009.
Right.
And I miss being able to call him on the phone and talk about the games, or what's going on in free agency, or whatever happens to be happening at the time. So so I got my crazy sports fandom stuff from them.
Yeah. See, I got it from my mother, and she's no longer with us too, and so I understand what you're talking about. It is, when you have that relationship, it is, it does make it a little bit harder. So you were a Patriots fan during the lean years. What was it like going through all of that, and then, of course, experiencing the wild success that they have had in the past 15 years?
Well, it was disappointing all the time. It was very much like, and it was actually a little worse than the Red Sox, because the Red Sox would be in it. They just let us down. Your heart would break. Whereas the Patriots were they just were always so mediocre. It wasn't fun. They did finally get to a Super Bowl in 1986, the 85 season, and then they got absolutely crushed by the Bears. So I remember that game distinctly, because I was in college up in Boston, and we all just shut the TV off at halftime. It was that bad. So it's been kind of crazy. With them winning so much. And I constantly try to remind the younger fan, don't get cocky. Don't be so – it's good to get excited and to really support your team.
Sure.
But try not to be so cocky and bold about it, because it ain't going to be this way forever.
Yeah.
And then, then you'll know what so many other fans of so many other teams feel like. We are so blessed, really, as fans.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible, the sustained success that the Patriots have experienced under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You have to give Tom Brady credit for that too. Although, for me, I weighted a little bit more toward Bill Belichick. But it's hard. How do you feel about all the cheating allegations, and how do you respond to that?
Well, whenever somebody comes at me with that stuff, I'm always kind of like, I've read a lot about all of it. So the first thing people always try to mention is the Tuck rule. Mm-hmm. And that always bugs me because the rule was in effect before that season, the year before that season. And if you're gonna be upset at the ref who called it or the league who put the rule into effect. Mm-hmm. So that's the first one. The second one is Spygate, which it was I think it was a lapse in judgment, also coupled with a little bit of
hubris.
Bill Belichick. I was going to say hubris, but
I think that's the word. I do.
Yeah, where the league said, listen, you're only allowed to record from this specific area. If you don't record in this specific area, it's considered a violation of the rules. And they just said, well, we're going to do whatever we want to do, and they got caught. Mm-hmm. So that is, I'll say that was definitely a bad one. Mm-hmm. Deflategate, I think, is complete BS. To be quite honest.
I know you do. I disagree.
I know you do disagree, and there's a lot of people who disagree. But I think that I think it's bull crap. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the notion that the NFL or Roger Goodell has some sort of vendetta. If you buy into the notion that the NFL, and I think it's true, that the NFL instituted the Tuck rule to protect Tom Brady, and guys like him, that the notion that the league has some sort of vendetta, against Tom Brady is sort of ridiculous.
Well, and the Tuck rule, you can't have one and then the other. But the Tuck rule was established before that season, the year before that season. So I don't know how it could have been established to protect Tom.
Well.
Really, I don't understand that because he wasn't our quarterback the year before that. He only came in during the 2001 season after Drew Bledsoe got hurt.
Yeah, which that's a story in and of itself.
Yeah. So Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. Tom Brady comes in off the bench and, plays really well. Ends up going to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl. But with Deflategate, I think the thing that bothers me the most about it is that if you read the Wells report, and I've read it cover to cover, there are so many little inconsistencies. They really never proved anything other than the fact that there were allegations made. There were, the guy goes into the bathroom for what purpose to go to the bathroom. Who knows with the footballs? They never took into account the weather and the temperature. And then after this is all said and done and they make this gigantic deal out of it, they say they're going to monitor pressure in footballs. They do this whole study, apparently, and then they never release the information. Mm-hmm. They never release the data. And it's never heard of again. Somebody mentioned something about footballs this year. What happened to it? Absolutely nothing. Aaron Rodgers gets on an interview and says he likes his balls overinflated, and he likes to overinflate them and then see if he gets caught. But nobody says anything about that. So it's the whole thing to me is just ridiculous.
Well, the NFL is certainly inconsistent in how they do things, and interpretation of the Tuck rule is really what we're talking about in terms of protecting, Tom Brady. But when you boil it down to its essence. And I've been as critical of the NFL as anybody in terms of how inconsistent they are about things. And the Aaron Rodgers thing, when you boil it down to its essentials, the NFL was responding to you do realize that the Colts lodged a complaint with the NFL, and that and that so it's different than the Aaron Rodgers situation, so when another member team lodges a complaint, the NFL does what it has to do. And when you look at the data, when you look at first and foremost, I absolutely think that Tom Brady tried to cheat. And I do not think that you have to be a successful cheat for the NFL to lodge some sort of discipline against you. And I think that the evidence was sufficient there for the NFL to institute some sort of discipline. Now, you can debate whether or not the discipline that was rendered was reasonable and fair and all of that, and and things of that nature. But I think the evidence was certainly sufficient there to show that they were trying to pull something. And
I disagree. I completely disagree with that.
I know that, but ultimately where it is right now, the courts agree with me.
But why? The second court of appeals dismissed it and said you don't have anything here. And then they came back, and the reason the NFL won the next appeal was because of the CBA. Yeah. And the CBA is saying that Roger Goodell can impose any penalty anytime he wants. That is essentially what happened.
Well, the district judge that dismissed it is a buddy of Robert Kraft, right? Donated, their bosom buddy.
So you're saying that a judge.
Can I finish? Please let me finish. How it ended up before him is sort of rather interesting, but I've read that opinion, and that opinion is ridiculous. I mean, it's completely and utterly ridiculous, and so
that's your opinion.
Sure,
I completely disagree, and I think it's wrong of you to you essentially just insinuated that a judge was bribed to render an opinion.
Well, you don't think that happens? You don't find that rather curious?
I don't jump to conclusions like that. I wouldn't jump to conclusions like that unless there was some kind of evidence of that. I read the opinion and I thought it was pretty good.
All the pictures and all the evidence about their close friendship isn't evidence to you?
No.
Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. I certainly think that reasonable minds can agree to disagree on that. But how do you feel about the fact that Robert Kraft and Tom Brady and apparently Bill Belichick are very close friends with Donald Trump, who, as it turns out, is has a lot of nefarious connections with a lot of nefarious people.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of connections to Donald Trump who are nefarious connections to other people. I think it's just one big, interesting web of relationships based on, I don't even know what. I mean, I don't really know how to address that because I don't know the extent of their relationship. I really wasn't happy with with him reading a letter from Bill Belichick in front of a group in New Hampshire. That really bugged me.
Yeah, and don't you think though the problem is that he's able to do that, but Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, those guys are refusing to talk about it?
Yeah, and I really don't have a problem with that. I have a problem. I have friends that I that I am close to that I completely disagree with, no matter,
Right.
I mean, and they're still friends. They're
Sure.
still family.
Absolutely.
And we just don't discuss those situations. And I know that, maybe they don't want to talk about, there's a reason they're not out there talking about it in public. So it really bothered me when he read that letter because to me it was a complete manipulation of what he's trying to say is, look, Bill Belichick's my friend. He sent me this letter. You need to vote for me. And that really bothered me. I mean, whether it bothered Bill or not, I don't know. He certainly was honest when he said, yeah, I wrote it. But if I was him, it would bother me. I mean, I don't want that.
Well, Tom Brady in his infamous "Make America Great" hat, you can't do. You can't do stuff like that. I mean, I guess you can, and certainly some people in the media are calling him out for it. But Tom Brady flaunting his "Make America Great" hat and then saying, "I'm not a political person. I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump." Well, that's just being a huge hypocrite.
Well, I don't know. I can't really speak to it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if somebody, who knows? If somebody gave him that and he threw it in, if Trump gave it to him and he put it in his locker.
Do you think that Tom Brady does anything that is that uncalculated? I certainly don't. He's far too aware of his position and his reputation. If you look at the response that he gave to the questions about his relationship with Donald Trump, you know that he's very aware. And it certainly wouldn't surprise me if his wife didn't say, "Do not talk about this."
Well, she's a huge environmentalist,
yes,
and I know somebody made a comment on an Instagram post of hers insinuating that they were both that they were both Trump supporters, and she was really upset about that.
Yeah.
So, whatever. I mean, that's their thing, and I don't really care, honest. I mean, at first it really, really bothered me because you know how I feel about Donald Trump.
Yes, I do. And I want you to know that even though things got a little tense there, I love you. I'm always going to love you.
I know, right, and back at you. I just, it gets.
I know it does. Listen, I know we get prickly about the things that we love, and we're going to defend them, and that's okay. I think to a point, and we're not going to get too deeply unless you want to. We want to talk about the game and all of that. And I don't want to keep you too long because I know that you've got other things to do, but it's. I think beholden upon us and important that we have these conversations. I think that we as citizens and Americans have abdicated our responsibility to have these conversations, but because we don't want to have the hard discussions.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I have tried in a lot of situations to have discussions with people that I think are less informed than I am, or not paying attention, and it's difficult. It's really hard. Sometimes I just say, you know what? I'm turning off. I'm just turning off social media. I don't want to be on Twitter. I don't want to be on Facebook.
Well, you and I had this conversation, and you know that I took a very, very, very long break from social media, from podcasting, after the election and a little bit before the election. We talked about the election exhaustively before it happened, and I saw what was coming. I was not shocked that Donald Trump...
I wasn't either.
I was not shocked, and there are a lot of reasons for that. And if you listen to this podcast, I've talked about a lot of them. But, and it's exhausting to have these conversations. It's exhausting to care. It's exhausting to try to educate people, but it's important that we do it. All right, so the game. And we can, if you want at the end, we can talk about that. But I want to talk about the game.
Okay.
So the Falcons, and part of it, I suppose, is because I was focused more primarily on, what was going on in the country, and sports sort of took a little bit of a back. Well, not a little bit. It did take a back seat
for me too.
For
to
what
be honest,
for what I was doing during the regular season. I never even up until they beat the Packers. I never was really buying into the Falcons. And so I'm going to have to just admit that I was wrong about the Falcons, and they're a much better team than I gave credit for. And I really love Dan Quinn, and I appreciate the job that he's doing down there. And Julio Jones is fantastic, and there's so many reasons their offensive line is really doing well. Give from the behind the enemy lines. Give me your take on the Falcons.
Yeah, I did enemy lines. I love it. Well, here's the interest. I haven't really gotten to see the Falcons play that much this year because, I have a Chargers fan husband, and
yes,
I'm trying to watch my games.
The poor Chargers. Oh my gosh, you'll have to come back. We'll have to talk about that.
Oh, I have so much to say about that.
I know.
But anyways, so I did see the one game they played against the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chargers beat them in overtime.
And the Chargers weren't a very good team.
No, they weren't. They weren't great. But having said that, that was towards I think it was in October. And the Falcons have continued to get better. Yeah. And I think maybe it has to do with the fact that their defense was a little bit younger. They had some youngsters on there, and they're starting to play better. Julio Jones, I have nothing but the greatest of respect for this guy. Yeah. I mean, he's an amazing wide receiver. Some of the catches he's made have been that I've seen, on replay or video or whatever, have been amazing. I think that Dan Quinn has done an exceptional job with them, and they've got some great offensive weapons. I mean, I looked over their schedule this morning, and I looked at all the points they've scored. They've scored a lot of points.
A whole lot of points.
A lot of points.
Man, and I say that as someone. I had Julio Jones on one of my fantasy teams, and I had Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman too. And seems like I had somebody else. I'll have to. Who is the other wide receiver that
Mohamed Sanu?
Yes, I had Mohamed Sanu.
Yeah. I wanted him in free agency when he was a free agent from the Jets, but he went to Atlanta and he's doing great there. I mean, it's like you can't put all your focus on Julio Jones because then you got to worry about Taylor Gabriel and
Taylor Gabriel too. Yeah, exciting young receivers. So they've got a lot of talent on that team.
They do have a lot of talent on their team. And we don't have Gronk. Yep. So we've been playing almost all season without Gronk. And but Chris Hogan has emerged as a great. I mean, he's done a great job. And I think one of the things that I really like about the team and the way they've played this year is the creativity in the offense. They had a flea flicker last week that was really good. I really enjoy watching them because I don't know what's going to happen. Our running game has really been good. We've got LeGarrette Blount, and then we have James White and Deion Lewis, both quick, both capable of catching and running. It's been a great season. So I'm really interested to see how we match up with the Falcons because we haven't played another team like them this year.
Yeah. And so what would be your 3 keys to beating the Falcons for the Patriots?
3 keys to beating the Falcons would be keep them off the field offensively.
Well, I think that's very important. Sure.
I mean, we're going to have to try.
One of the things that really impressed me about the Patriots this year, and I don't know why I didn't expect it, but their defense was a lot better than I expected it to be. I thought it was pretty outstanding.
I agree, and I think we've been lacking in that. In that our defense hasn't been great. Last year they weren't great. Mm-mm. This year they've been really much better. Malcolm Butler has been doing really well at cornerback And Logan Ryan, too, which kind of surprised me because last year I seemed to be yelling at him a lot. And
that's so funny.
I know. You should hear me. And I think the offensive line has been doing a lot better too this year, and the defensive line, honestly. Plus, we've gotten a couple of linebackers in free agency. So now we've got Chris Long, defensive end. We've got Kyle Van Noy, we got from the Bears. This is Jamal Sheard's second year with the Patriots. He came from the Browns.
What did you think about the trade of Jamie Collins? I understand that it made business sense, but I didn't really appreciate all the insinuations that he wasn't good and wasn't doing his job and all of that.
Yeah, you never really know because the media talks a lot, and you don't know what's true and what's not true. I heard somebody saying that he was, quote, freelancing, and that's why they got rid of him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was really sad to see him go because I think he's such a great talent.
He is.
I mean, he's and he did pretty well in Cleveland. I mean, it's Cleveland, so
right.
we'll have to see what happens there. But I guess they just signed him for next year. I was sad. I love Jamie Collins.
Yeah.
And I think Dante Hightower is still a little upset that Jamie Collins is gone too. Because
I bet he is. Because he's getting more attention.
Somebody asked him who his favorite defensive player in the NFL was, and he said Jamie Collins.
That's so funny.
So but yeah. I
better watch it, Dante. You'll be next.
I know, seriously. But yeah, I think the defense has been great. I've been really, really impressed. And we have a rookie guard named Joe Tooney who came from NC State, and he's been playing really well on the O line. The offensive line has been pretty much intact all year long, which is a complete change from last year.
Last year
where,
was just such a disaster.
Oh, it was awful. And
and Atlanta too. I mean, I think that's important. It's an important point for both of these teams. Their trenches have solidified and are playing very well.
Definitely. And I mean, it's you've got two great quarterbacks. I think Matt Ryan and Tom Brady. I read the other day that they were that they're text buddies because Matt Ryan went to BC, and so they text back and forth, and I thought it was interesting. But they're both really good quarterbacks.
Yep.
But to be a really good quarterback, you have to have a decent offensive line.
Sure do.
And to have a good running game, you have to have a decent offensive line. And the Patriots have had both this year. I mean, our run game has gotten so much better. We've been able to work the play action, which, we've had problems with last year. Sometimes Brady couldn't even get the ball out of his hands. It's been a lot more fun to watch this year. So I was really impressed, and I'm really excited for the game on Sunday.
I bet you are. You want to give me a prediction?
Well, I got to pick my Patriots.
But, of course. Do you think it's going to be a close game?
I do. I think it's going to be a close game.
Is it going to be high scoring?
I don't know.
I don't know either. See, I've gone back and forth on that. I'm not. Part of me says yes. I mean, how could it not be with such good offenses? But, again, we talked about how well the Patriots defense, like you, I haven't watched Atlanta as much as, I would like to have, and I don't know how good their defense really is. I think that's probably going to be the key. How well can Atlanta's defense, stop the Patriots' offense?
Yeah, I think you're right. So I don't know. I'm going to say like 57 points. Just throwing it out there. I don't know.
Combined points or one?
Yes, combined points.
Okay.
Somewhere between 55 and 60.
Okay. So, maybe 28, 32.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, That certainly makes sense. That certainly makes sense. So, do you want to weigh in on what's going on in the country? You want to save that for another time? I know you got other things to do.
Sure, I can do that.
So, yeah, I mean, to say that we're living in interesting times would be an understatement. I would say we're living in extremely scary times.
Yes.
I don't know. Where did all this white supremacy come from?
I don't know. It's interesting. I have no idea. I mean, I live in California, so I'm quote a coastal elite.
Right.
So I don't see a whole lot of that. I live in a town that's predominantly Mexican. I have a lot of there are towns around me that are white but
right.
mixed.
Right.
And I've always kind of I grew up and lived in diverse environments. Mm-hmm. People from all over the world I've worked with. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because I went to visit some friends in Ohio, and I got there, and we did all kinds of different things, and everybody was so nice. Mm-hmm. But it was a predominantly white area, mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, would I feel the same way, or would people treat me the same way if I was brown or black, mm-hmm. or from another country, didn't speak English? Would they treat me the same way?
Or even if you looked white, but you have the traditional dress of Muslims and
right,
yeah.
Right, and it's sad to me that I even have to think that way, but that's my privilege. I never really had to think about it.
Yeah.
And it's really sad to me the way the state of affairs that we're in. I think a lot of people, and I have friends and family that voted for Trump because they think that he would be an outsider that would go in there and shake things up and get rid of the career politicians and make sure that people are really working for people, and I'm kind of like, okay, he said that, but what would make you believe that he's actually going to do that?
Yeah,
all you have to do is look at his life.
It's like the biggest con ever, right? I mean, the only thing the man has ever done is buy and con people. Period.
True.
And it's amazing, and they're like little cultists. It's so I believe we can get through to them, but I think it's going to be extremely hard, and it's going to require constant. I mean, they don't believe the truth. They don't believe facts. You don't believe any. There are people that think that this man who has been married 4 times, cheated on every wife he's ever had, is going to make Christian. I mean, he is a Christian.
I know. He gets up there and he doesn't even know to say 2 Corinthians when he reads a passage from the Bible.
It's just the craziest thing. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not even a real churchgoer anymore, and even I know that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me. Tell everybody out there where they can find you on social media and find your work.
I'm on NFLfemale.com, and you can find my articles under the New England Patriots or AFC East. And you can find me on Twitter, Tracy, TRACIAMC at Twitter. I can't even talk today.
No, right. Hang on just a second. We're gonna take another quick break. Tracy, stay on the line.
Okay.
So when we come back, we'll wrap things up. So stay tuned in. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona.
And I always fill my ballroom. The event is never small. The social pages say I've got the biggest balls of all. I've got big balls. I've got big balls. They're such big balls, and they're tasty big balls.
All right, welcome back. Such fun talking with Tracy yesterday and turning the attention a little bit back to sports and the big game on Sunday. I am kind of, go Falcons. Listen, I have friends who are Patriot fans, and I like to gig them. It's fun. That one of the most fun things about sports is the rivalry and the competition and the competitiveness and as fans being able. Now I can't trash talk because my teams suck, but mostly. So, but it is fun to have those conversations, and we don't always have to agree on things. We can disagree on things, and we can have conversations about that, and maybe you'll persuade someone, maybe not. But never forget, as long as the other person, is willing to do the same, walk away from it with the understanding that disagreements are okay. And in the end, I really do think that we are all just wanderers trying to find our way through this crazy thing called life. And so more conversation, more protest. Protest is good. Protest is American. Protest is protected by your Constitution, Americans. Never forget that. I wonder how many people legitimately have sat down and read their Constitution. Don't get your information about the Constitution from, people who don't know it or understand it. Read it. Read up on it. Educate yourself. Be a free thinker. Be an open to listening to people beyond the little circle that you surround yourself with. Beyond the, be careful. Obviously, you don't want to. There are websites out there that regularly publish false information, truly fake news, and you have to be careful about that. It's amazing to me how many people read those websites, but educate yourself. Try to expand your range of information. Do you legitimately listen to other people who have viewpoints different from your own and consider what they're having to say? Or are you so close-minded that you don't consider the possibility that they might have something to tell you, something to teach you? I don't know. I think that that's a big problem right now in this country, and hopefully we can get beyond that. More on protest. I found another quote that I wanted to read to you. I don't know if I read this. I don't think that I read this. Leonardo da Vinci had to say, "Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence." That is so true. And we'll finish that with Desmond Tutu, who said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." Protest is, here's an interesting one. Well, we'll have to. To sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men. Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Protest is good. Don't ever let anybody tell you different. Hey, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. Check out my website, backtalkwithsharona.com. And we'll be back next week with another podcast. So stay tuned in for that. Have a great day. Happy Friday. And have a great weekend. Go Falcons.
with you.